It's my pleasure to introduce to you my friend and a great warrior for freedom, John Stossel.
I have notes here because I'm no Joe Morris or Jim, too. They spoke without notes. I can't do that. Morris, I've never seen that. He never paused. He never said, this is very unusual. He's an old guy like me, and he can do that. I want to talk about my experience with Heartland. And as Jim said, my goal has been to popularize these ideas. And on 2020, we were getting 10 million views or so. That was good. They eventually, as you suggested, fired his ass. And I went to Fox, and they gave me my own show to do this. I didn't love this because I like to work on something for a week and carefully edit it and research it. Fox is just all live talking. So my son said, Dad, there's this thing called the internet, and you've got 1 million Twitter followers. You don't need a network anymore. So I've, in the last 5-7 years or so, been making videos. I release one every Tuesday, short videos, kind of like the old Give Me a Break pieces. And they average 2.3 million views. So we're reaching people. My Fox show didn't reach that many. So that felt good until I worked with Heartland. And I did this, there it is, this story with Heartland. We titled it, Are We Doomed? And of course it was the climate issue, and Heartland proposed a debate. And let's just talk about climate for a moment. We may not all agree, but to me, when people raise it, it seems like it's 4 issues. Is the climate warming? Yes, there's not much doubt about that. Does man play a part? There are people here who will say no, but listening to the various scientists, have become convinced that most of them think we play a part, and maybe the biggest part. It's hard to say. But where it really breaks down is it a crisis, and is there anything we can do about it now? And to me, the answer is no. I mean, Holland adjusted to rising waters years ago when they had crummy equipment. I mean, we can adjust to climate change. And the stuff we're doing now, spending billions on things that won't make any difference, is enraging to me. So I was happy when Jim said, look, we've got 3 climate scientists who just want to debate the alarmists. They make this point that we can adjust. It's not that big a crisis. And we can't get the other side to debate. And I tried. We called 20, 30 places trying to get people to debate the 3 Heartland people. And they wouldn't. And so I did this Are We Doomed video about it. And put that slide back up. Do you notice something unusual on the bottom? 24.1 million views. It became my most watched video. However, the controversy over it led to it nearly totally killing my free market enterprise. Because Facebook, so threatened by that, clamped down. Facebook was my, by far, biggest reach, 24 million views. Bill O'Reilly used to get 4 million, Tucker 4 million. And the Facebook numbers are kind of nonsense, so you only have to watch more than 7 seconds to get a view, but still, it was a lot of people. And Facebook censored it as misleading and started to cut off my views. And this was a big threat to me because that's all I do. And there are other alternatives where these videos can go out. There's YouTube, where we now get about 1 million, and Twitter, TikTok, Rumble. Fortunately, we have other alternatives. But a Facebook fact checker said I wasn't telling the truth about climate change. And the first story that made them mad had no Heartland involvement. It was about the California wildfires. The media was droning on it. The climate change has caused the California wildfires. And it was nonsense. It was bad government management, as so often happens. They weren't cutting away the debris. And you could really see this because on privately managed lands, they cut away the debris and they were much less likely to burn. So we do a video where I say, look, climate change played a part. The areas where the wildfires were have warmed over the years, and that creates some dry climate and exacerbated it. But the main reason is bad government management. And this group of Facebook fact checker called Climate Feedback, and Facebook says, you know, we can't judge this. We'll go to these scientific... Lies. Whoops. All right, play it. The lie starts with Facebook's so-called fact checker, a group called Climate Feedback, run by this man. It posted this statement in quotes as if it were something I said. But I never said that. In my video arguing that government mismanagement fueled California's wildfires, I acknowledged that climate change plays a role. Climate change has made things worse. California's warmed 3 degrees over 50 years. So Climate Feedback uses a quote I never said, and based on that, Facebook restricts my views. Now, I've worked for CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox. If you put up a quote where someone didn't say it, I would have gotten fired. And yet, Facebook is just leaving this quote up even after we called their attention to it, that's not what I said. We can appeal. You can appeal these judgments, and when I appeal to Facebook, they send it to Climate Feedback, the very group that was objecting in the first place. You know, most smart people would just move on, but I have these videos I can do every week, and I'm used to doing this kind of investigation. So Climate Feedback publishes the names of its reviewers who make their decisions for them, and we called all 7. 2 agreed to be interviewed. And, well, that was interesting when they agreed. I talked to the guy, and in the middle of the interview, he said, well, you're talking to me like you're assuming I watched your video. That was a shock. And it turned out, of the 2 guys who agreed to an interview, they said, we never watched this. Let's put the next one up and see if we can hear from... You're smearing me based on something I didn't say.
Yeah, I mean, I've never commented on your article.
That was a shock. He hadn't even seen my video.
If this is implying that we have reviewed the video, then this is clearly wrong. There's something wrong with the system.
He said my video was probably flagged because I interviewed environmentalist Michael Schellenberger. Climate Feedback doesn't like his new book that criticizes environmental alarmism.
My assumption is because Schellenberger pops up in there and his statements have basically been shown to be partially wrong.
This issue has become very political, which is unfortunate.
Zeke Hausfather's another Climate Feedback reviewer. He hadn't seen the video either.
I certainly did not write a climate feedback piece reviewing your segment.
So we sent him a link to my video, and he watched it. Is that a fair label on the video that I did?
I don't necessarily think so. You know, while there's plenty of debates around how much to emphasize forest management versus climate change, your piece clearly discussed that both were at fault here.
And yet, Facebook says this violated their rules. The fact checkers said so, and they curtailed my reach. But only a little bit. I didn't really get killed until I worked with Jim and Heartland. And that was the proposed debate. They had their 3 climate scientists, and we kept inviting the other side. The other side just didn't show up, and so I played the role of the other side and confronted people and threw out what we hear from the mainstream media, and their good scientists rebutted it. The best, I think, was Pat Michaels, who responded to the point about, and there are more hurricanes now, and the hurricanes are getting stronger.
No, they aren't. You can take a look at all the hurricanes around the planet. We can see them since 1970 because we got global satellite coverage.
Right.
And we can measure their power, and we can add up their power. And there is no significant increase whatsoever.
And then another sample from that, if you'd play the next video, we eventually got one of the reviewers to agree to an interview about why they censored me. But they really did censor, because from that 24 million you saw, now I get thousands of views on Facebook. What once had been the biggest isn't. I mean, it's worth it to be honest and try to convey these ideas, but this really killed us. And when I contacted Facebook and said, look, you got a quote that's not accurate, they just ignored me.
Entire ecosystems are collapsing.
We're not doomed, said these scientists.
It's all about arm waving, it's about emotion, about sending out kids in protest.
Now Facebook won't show you that video because so-called fact-checker Emmanuel Vincent told Facebook that it contains partly false information.
All the climate scientists that I know personally, they agree that climate change is real.
But wait, our video said climate change is real. But Vincent found scientists who disagreed with some of what we said. Only one would agree to be interviewed, Patrick Brown.
What I took issue with was like the sea level claim.
Brown didn't like that these scientists said that America can adjust to rising sea levels by doing things like building dikes to hold water back, like Holland has. You acknowledge, though, the water is rising.
Yes, water has been rising for approximately 20,000 years.
To me, when I watch that video, what I hear is that sea levels have been rising at a pretty constant rate forever. It's very small, it's not a big deal, and we will, adapt. That's not the mainstream view.
Brown says sea levels could eventually rise 200 feet. But you're citing an extreme. Obviously, if sea levels rose 200 feet, that would be a huge problem. But the IPCC doesn't consider that likely.
I don't know if they assess sea level rise out to 1,000 years, but that's what I'm talking about.
1,000 years. Think about that. This particular reviewer has gotten wiser, and just this week he's in the Wall Street Journal talking about how he got an article published in one of the science journals only by leaving out mitigating factors that would suggest it's not a crisis, because he knew he had to do that to get published. Anyway, that killed off the views, so I filed a lawsuit. I don't like suing, but the idea that they didn't watch the thing and that they left up this quote and won't take it down made me mad enough, and I got convinced by a Republican law firm in California that I had a good slander case. We brought the case, cost a lot of money. Thank you for any of you who might have donated to it. Thank Heartland for expediting some of the technical issues, and it went before a judge. It's the woman in the lower right. It's my lawyer in the upper left. The bad guy's lawyers on the lower left and upper right. And she mulled it over for about 6 months while the lawyers collected more money, and then threw it out, summary judgment. Now, the one benefit we got is in the course of defending themselves, Facebook, Meta, they call themselves now, admitted that the fact checkers weren't really checking facts. The fact check was just another opinion. And you can't sue it about an opinion. And I could have appealed, but that would have cost more money, and it was at the time when Elon Musk took over Twitter. And I thought, let the speech flow. I like that Musk is letting Trump back on and letting the readers make their own decisions. So I'm still furious. They still have the wrong quote up. I've still lost all those Facebook views, but thank God there's YouTube. All this comes from a pattern that I've seen over my career, that the media drive hysteria about everything. Climate change is a good one to keep going because it's so nebulous and there's always bad weather somewhere. It keeps people scared about something. And you may feel more alive when you get a scare. I mean, it's amazing that thousands of planes take off from O'Hare Airport down the road and they don't crash. But that's not news. It's news when there's a danger. And over my 300 years working as a consumer reporter, I've just covered so many. I mean, the killer bees are going to swarm and come up and sting us to death. Flesh-eating bacteria. Y2K is going to cause all the planes to crash. Lawn chemicals were causing the cancer epidemic. There is no cancer epidemic. We're using more chemicals, more plastics than ever, and the cancer rate is slightly down. We're living long enough to get cancer, which is why it seems that the cancers are up, and also people are more willing to talk about their personal problems now. But cancer isn't up. Yet the media would make you think it is. Saccharin, NutraSweet, hair dye, coffee, electric blankets, cell phones, giving you brain tumors, overhead power lines. Paul Brodeur in The New Yorker won a Pulitzer Prize talking about how they give you cancer. They don't. They were wrong about all these things. But the scares keep coming. And we reporters, we go talk to the scientist who's pushing the scare. And he's not a phony. He genuinely believes it. The people who work closest to the dangers are the emergency room doctors, the ones who get most angry when people don't wear bike helmets. People closest to it get the most scared, and reporters pick that up, say it must be true. But they were sure that people were getting brain cancer from their cell phone. Another big one was Rachel Carson, worshipped in every high school, saying, we have to preserve nature and these pesticides are killing people and the worst is DDT. Well, DDT killed no one. Turned out it did make eggshells thinner on bald eagles, and it partly happened because we were being ridiculous about it. We were spraying it everywhere. The kids would follow the trucks because they were happy to have mosquitoes killed, using vast amounts. And that, unsurprisingly, was dangerous. But the media hysteria about this scared people all over the world, so that DDT killed off malaria in places like Sri Lanka. 3 million deaths went down to 17 cases in 1963. Now they're back up again because our environmentalists tell people pesticides are evil. But 1 million people every year die from malaria. They don't count because mosquitoes are natural. Of all the thousands of scares that I covered for years, only 2, I think, turned out to be real. And I'm embarrassed that I was skeptical about COVID. Okay, that one turned out to be real. And climate change, because it is real and it is a problem we need to deal with. It doesn't justify banning good fuels like natural gas. And what Heartland's about, and what my reporting is now about, it seems that we're right to focus on what's the most important thing. And that is, what makes life good for people? There are 7 billion people on Earth. Maybe 1 billion of us live pretty good lives. 1 billion live in miserable poverty. What's the difference? It's free market. Free markets have lifted 1 billion people out of miserable poverty. And yet they are vilified. I went to a big New Jersey high school and asked the students that 7 billion question, why are we doing well when in other parts of the world they're suffering? And silence. And one kid says, we invented democracy. They don't know about the Greeks. Another kid says, we have natural resources. But consider India. They have democracy and natural resources, but India's poor. And consider, let's put the next slide up. Consider this place, Hong Kong. And Milton Friedman taught me about this. They've got no natural resources. It's a rock. They had no democracy. They had the British rulers, and then for a while they had benign Chinese rulers. But they had what it takes to allow prosperity to happen. The British rulers enforced rule of law. They punished people who robbed each other or killed each other. They enforced property rights. You need that. But then they sat around and drank tea. They left people alone. And by leaving people alone, all this amazing prosperity was created in Hong Kong. I mean, one example was that I could start a business in one day in Hong Kong. It took $20, get a permit. It was a stupid business selling ABC Frisbees and yo-yos and things like that. But that ability to try something is what makes such a difference. And compare Hong Kong to India, where bureaucrats must give you permission before you can do anything new. And this was an example of one of the rooms. Think about all the possible great new ideas that were dying on those shelves while the bureaucrats decided whether Coca-Cola would be allowed to sell Coke in India or whether it was too harmful in a place where people were starving at the time. Limited government is the secret. It's what Heartland stands for. Free markets and limited government, property rights and rule of law. It makes everybody's life better. And yet people keep talking about capitalism killing people. I mean, think about Versailles and the vast wealth that was there and the stories about the kings. And yet, poor people now have access to better, longer lives than the kings did. We have air conditioning, flush toilets. You want to give any of those up? Fresh food in the winter, music and theater on demand, pain relief, cars, airplanes, electric lights, cell phones. We take all this for granted. We always take capitalism for granted. That's why we have to go out and fight for it. Instinctively, people like command and control. Next one here. You know, you want to change a light bulb? The Democrats would want to have the president direct that. And people like the safety of that. Oh, he went to Harvard. I don't know how to build a sewage treatment plant, but let's let the experts do it. Selling the invisible hand is tougher. It's, for one thing, it's invisible. I've tried in various ways, tried to police a skating rink. I got an Olympic champion to direct people, and of course, some fell down. It was much more confusing. It's our job to keep trying to explain free markets to people. And I'm not saying they're perfect. There will always be scams and bubbles, and people will be hurt by that. But you have to allow people to fail to allow capitalism to work. I came out of New Trier High School outside here and then went to Princeton, where I was taught that none of that's true. That capitalism is okay, brings us some stuff, but by and large it's cruel, unfair, and we need lots of government to end poverty and solve all these problems. And young me believed that a few years ago. And my peers loved it when I did that kind of reporting, and I won 19 Emmy Awards. I don't win any of those awards now. But It's right in front of us. Why can't we see it? Look at the supermarket. I mean, it's amazing. The aisles are wide, it's well lit, it's open often 24/7. The food is unbelievably cheap. They rarely poison us. Government can't even count votes accurately. And we at least had models of failure in the Soviet Union. You could see what a supermarket there was like. We take it for granted that you could go to a kiosk like this and a total stranger will rent you a car for a week, someone who doesn't even speak your language. And you can put a piece of plastic in the wall and cash will come out. And when you get home, Visa or MasterCard will have the accounting correct to the penny. We just take it for granted. Again, government can't count the votes accurately. Let's sell the idea of the supermarket to Americans. Capitalism is better. Everybody wins. I try to do that with my videos now. Thank you, Heartland supporters, for doing that here. Thank you very much.